Hey everyone, I'm Kavin. This is the In My Head podcast. Thanks so much for checking out another episode. I'm stoked to be back. This is our first episode of 2021, and it's a topic I've wanted to cover for a really long time. I got to give a few plugs first, and that is if you want to support our podcast, go to our YouTube channel and like and subscribe. Engage with the videos, share them with people more than anything that you think that it would benefit. That's one of the main channels we're trying to grow so that we can get more resources out to people in need and wanting to help their loved ones as well. The next is we have a donation website. You go to patreon.com/inmyhead podcast. It's a donation website, monthly donation website. You can donate as little as $1 a month, and 100% of your donation will go to supporting this podcast. If you like CBD products, you can go to this link. When you purchase products through CBDmd at this link, a portion of the sales go to supporting our podcast. So that's greatly appreciated. The last one, we don't get any kickbacks from these guys. It's betterhelp.com/inmyhead. If you type that in, you can get a free week of online therapy, which a lot of people are finding benefit now, especially being at home, that you can do it through Zoom. You can change your therapist at any time. There's no contracts, there's no obligation, so you can really just cancel even after the free week if you don't want to continue. We have a Facebook page, we have an Instagram page, so supporting us on social media is always much appreciated. And we also have a Facebook private group, so you can go there and join, and it's a place we're trying to create over time, grow it so that we can have good conversations there where people don't feel fear of judgment or anything like that, just being open with their own experiences and learning from each other. So we are growing that, so you can check that out on Facebook, our private group. I think that's everything. I'm excited about this episode, so let's get started. You're listening to the In My Head podcast, a place for open discussions about mental and physical health. This is not meant to be a diagnosis or a treatment plan, but a safe place to share ideas, hear personal stories, and learn from trained professionals. Our number one goal is to remove the stigma surrounding mental health and provide resources for those struggling, as well as education for those who want to help their loved ones. Difficult subjects of mental illness, suicide, addiction, and abuse are discussed on this podcast. Viewer discretion is advised. Thanks for listening, and welcome to the In My Head podcast. All right, so today, this is a topic I've wanted to cover for a long time, and it's about migraines. And it might seem weird for this podcast, but it's something that's often so intertwined with mental health. A lot of people who experience depression, anxiety, often talk about having migraines as well. And I've met so many people over the years that experience this. And in many cases, they also experience anxiety or high stress. So I've wanted to talk about this. I've wanted to talk about this as someone who's had migraines for over 10 years now. I started getting them when I was probably 26, heavily in college and studying, and like really high stress time. I also had a ski injury that affected my back and my neck. So I have a lot of things that are intertwined with where my migraines started. I can almost pinpoint the first one I had, where it was never a headache, what I consider to be a headache. I was just laid down, and it was something I had never experienced before like that. And that kind of started this slew of migraines that I've dealt with over 10 years. And I've gone to lots of doctors to try and figure out why. And I've gotten lots and lots of good information over the years. So I've kind of compiled a list of things that help people with migraines, help you prevent migraines. And that's what I want to discuss today. So everything I'm going to talk about today is something I've tried. And I don't think there's anything on this list that I haven't tried. A lot of these have come from other people telling me what has helped them. It's come from medical professionals, nutritionists, lots of different areas. So I've got a big list, and I'll try and be short on them so we can keep the episode fairly short. But I want to quickly talk about the difference between a migraine and a headache, because I've said this too, I'm sure, in the past before I had migraines, where you have a really bad headache and you say, oh, I got a migraine. And a lot of people, when they realize the difference between a headache and a migraine, realize, I've heard a lot of people say like, oh, I've never had one of those, actually, when they fully understand what a migraine is. The difference between a headache and a migraine, one of the biggest things is the duration of it. My wife sometimes will come in and say, oh, I have a headache. And I'll be like, shoot, is there anything I can do for you? And I'll kind of check in like 30 minutes later, like, how's your head doing? She'll like, oh, it's gone. I ate, or I drank some water, or people can take a nap and wake up and it's gone. A migraine is so different in that way that it can last from 4 hours to days. And I think the longest migraine I've had that was kind of a continuous migraine was probably 3 days. It hasn't happened very often. Usually mine is a day that sometimes bleeds into the next day, or I'll get one as the day goes on. I'll go to sleep and I'll wake up and it's still there. That's kind of normal for mine, about like in between 24, to 36 hours is pretty common. But I've had them last for 3 days. The last time when I got off caffeine, which has now been 2.5 months, and it's the reason I'm still not drinking caffeine, is because it was so bad when I got off drinking caffeine that it was literally a week of migraines, 3 days of very intense migraines. Nothing was working. I was throwing everything, all the tools I had at it, and nothing was working. And then it went away for a couple of days and then kind of surged back for a couple of days. And then about that week is kind of when they started mellowing out. And it's literally why I did a 30-day caffeine challenge, and I'm still going 2.5 months now, because I don't want to experience that anytime soon again, if ever. So a lot of people experience that when they get off caffeine, and that's why most people never stop drinking caffeine, is for the headaches and all the things that come along with it. But migraines are different from headaches in that way, that they last longer. They tend to be more intense. A lot of times they're on only a portion of your head. A lot of times mine will start in my neck, wrap around my head, and then kind of settle on one side of my face. A lot of times directly in my eye, which is really irritating, especially when you're like me, you're editing videos and photos. You're spending a lot of time in front of the computer. It can be really aggravating. A lot of times it can just kind of settle in one side of your face, all the way down your cheek to your jaw. Mine has no rhyme or reason. It'll kind of start in my neck and settle on one side of my face, or sometimes I'll just feel it kind of like right in my temple, and it just gets more intense. And so that's kind of a clear definition of the difference between a migraine and a headache. I've looked into what a migraine is, like what's happening in your body. I've seen lots of different research and definitions that they think it is. The most common one I saw is you get this dilation of blood vessels in your brain, which causes a lot of pressure. That's why a lot of migraine medications work on constricting your blood vessels to relieve that pressure. I was reading something recently that talked about hormone fluctuations, and we can talk all day about the things that cause migraines. I'm just talking about what it actually is, like what's happening. But it's interesting how little they're understood. There's lots of medications and things that do prevent it, and they know things that can help to relieve the pain, the pressure, but it's pretty wild to me still how little is understood about the cause of migraines. They pretty much can pin it on stress, trauma, anxiety, depression. These things definitely are causing them, but they're still not really sure what's happening in the body to cause that. I've seen imbalances in hormones. I think I already said that, but aside from that, here's a whole list of things that can happen when you're experiencing migraines. The number one thing is auras. You hear a lot of people talking about auras, which I luckily don't experience a lot, but I did. When was that? Probably around the same time, if not the same time as getting off caffeine. I had auras for the first time, and doctors always are like, do you get auras with migraines? And that can be kind of a flashing or feeling like you're getting these kind of flashes of light, or auras as they call them. Mine was happening right in the side of my eye. There was this kind of flickering aura, which was super annoying, because on top you have the migraine pain and all that fun stuff, and then you get these flashing in the side of your eye, and it was really affecting my vision. Luckily it was like 11 o'clock at night, and it was right before bed, so luckily I got to go to sleep and wake up, and that was gone. The migraine was still there, but that was gone at least. That's a big thing with migraines. One part of your head, I already talked about that. Nausea is a different thing with headaches and migraines. Nausea often accompanies migraine, can lead to vomiting. That has happened to me. Sorry if that's too much information. I was the 2020, actually, I was on a work trip, and I was driving I was on a work trip with my brother-in-law, and literally we were driving. I was like, I just woke up with an insane migraine. And I was like, you got to pull the car over. It was very different for me. It's happened a handful of times, not a lot. And I just had to run and vomit. Like, it was gnarly, and it's not the easiest thing when you got to do a whole work day after that. You're experiencing that, but that's what a lot of people with migraines have to deal with. They've got jobs, they've got to take care of kids. They've got a lot of responsibility that you don't have the option to just kind of sleep it off a lot of times. Light sensitivity, I kind of talked about that with auras, but light sensitivity, going outside, is kind of brutal when you have a migraine. Sound sensitivity, it is very true, and I've experienced it myself. It's already hard for parents when they have kids and you're trying to get stuff done and they're being loud and crazy and they're crashing into things and stuff like that. And then you have experienced that with a migraine. And that's the thing I've tried really hard over the years, to just be patient as being a parent, because I'm like, my kids don't know what I'm experiencing. They don't know the migraine I'm feeling. But it can be hard sometimes. I remember one time one of my kids just screamed and he was right by my ear when I had a migraine, and it felt like it just went to my core. And so sound sensitivity is brutal. It can really affect your hearing. Not only that, you can get ringing in the ears, fluttering in your ears, which I've had all of those fun things. Tingling in the face. I remember that was a scary one for me, because I was getting tingling in my face, my head, and I thought I had nerve damage and things going on. But I've learned so much over the years of the crazy things that happen to your body when you're experiencing high levels of stress, anxiety. It can mimic heart attacks. It can mimic paresthesia. All these things that if you were to look it up on WebMD, it's going to tell you basically you have a tumor, you have all these things going on, which I've gone through all those things. When I started getting heavy anxiety, depression, migraines, for a time I turned into a hypochondriac. I was just Googling everything, and that's just kind of the reality of experiencing all those things, because you hear people, they have, tingling in the face, they have like muscle weakness, all these different things. You naturally just think the worst, because you're like, oh, it's happening to me. Something is really bad going on, and it's real, but the pains and sensations that come along with it often aren't what they appear to be. So I talked about it lasting much longer than a normal headache, 4 hours to days. Using headache medication usually doesn't work. Things like Tylenol, ibuprofen, Excedrin, those usually don't put a dent in a migraine. I think they have Excedrin migraine, which a lot of people have told me that helps them. And we'll go through some of that later on. That's kind of the last thing I'm going to talk about, the medications, as kind of, if you're trying to go the more natural route, those are always there for you, just like medication with mental health. It might not be the very first thing you want to try. You personally, I'm not saying in general, but for me, that was kind of something I wanted to wait, just knowing that it's there for me if I need that. That can kind of be a last thing. And migraines can be chronic. It can be, you get a headache sometimes when you're dehydrated or something happens, you can get a headache. Migraines can be more of a disorder, a chronic disorder that comes and goes, or it can be something you just experience on a weekly basis. And so before I start with this list I've kind of created of things I've done personally and do to prevent migraines and help when I get migraines, I want to say, it goes without saying that we have this disclosure at the very start of every podcast, but with migraines, you do want to rule out that something deeper is happening. I'm not saying that to scare anybody, but don't take this list as your prescription, like, okay, I got my migraines and this and that. Do what you feel is best. Take this information, see if it applies to you. If you're already in talks with a family doctor or a mental health therapist, talk to them about these things. Obviously, they're your assigned professional, medical professional to take care of you. So make sure you can rule something out. When I very first got migraines, like I said, my first inclination was that I had a brain tumor. I went and got an MRI for multiple reasons. So I had a really bad ski crash, and I was making sure like something didn't go wrong with brain trauma, with anything like that. And so I got an MRI. I was going to lots of different doctors. They couldn't figure out why I was getting that. And so those are just things you do want to rule out, is some type of physical trauma that's causing migraines. And again, I don't say that to scare you. 99.9% of people aren't going to have that, but that's just always something to do to take care of yourself first. Make sure that you're taken care of physically, and then then this list is going to help you with things that you can think about, rule out, or add to your regimen that could greatly help with your migraines. This episode is all about, most of this, like 99% of this episode is about migraine prevention. And that goes along with what I've talked about in the podcast forever, is it's much better to prevent something than wait until the catastrophe and trying to fix it. It's better to build a strong dam before you fill up the water than kind of build a weak one. And then when holes kind of start poking out, you're just filling them with gum and glue and stuff. So probably a terrible metaphor, but like, it's much better to be on top of the migraines and be daily actively doing things to prevent them, to be healthy, to prevent them, instead of just doing the things are causing migraines and then just take a medication to get rid of it. And in saying this, know that I've made every mistake you can make with migraines. So in saying any of this, I'm not perfect of any of these things. This is all things that I've tried, and some have helped, some haven't helped. So take that for what it may be. I'm going to start with probably the hardest one, and for a lot of people, and that is cutting out alcohol, caffeine, tobacco. 3 things that are known for people who suffer with migraines that can greatly increase the intensity and the number of migraines you have. Alcohol might not be a problem for you, but a lot of people experience that getting off of that greatly reduces lots of things when it comes to migraine and mental health issues. A lot of people supplement alcohol for depression, and most of them will come back. I mean, I'm generalizing, but a lot of them have come back and talked to me personally and said that in the end, it makes it worse. It feels like a Band-Aid at the time, that it's feeling better, and then when it's over, it comes right back. So it's not really a long-term solution. And so when it comes to alcohol, I've talked to a lot of people that maybe they don't get off alcohol, but they greatly reduce the amount of drinking and not using alcohol, just like not using caffeine as a way to stop a migraine. I've done that a lot of times where I feel a migraine coming on, so I go get a cup of coffee or drink an energy drink in the past, or something with caffeine in it to more mitigate this oncoming migraine, which I'm not saying is bad to do in the moment, but it is nothing more than a Band-Aid. It's not a long-term solution. And so greatly reducing that, if not cutting it out, can really, really help with migraines. I've experienced cutting these things out, particularly how much they help with reducing migraines, because most of them are triggers and most are things that your body's processing. And if you are sensitive to migraines, they are going to affect that. And so when I did that caffeine challenge, I was not amazed, because I would have been in the same camp too if someone else announced it, but so many people reaching out like, oh, I wish I could do this. I can't experience the week of hell I'm going to experience when I get off caffeine. But it really is just that. It really is kind of a week of hell that if you're preparing for, if you know it's going to come, you plan it at the right time, it is something you can make it through. And then when it's done, it becomes a lot easier. Like, it's funny for me, I think it was so bad getting off caffeine for me this last time that I have zero desire to drink caffeine. And I love it. I love pretty much everything that caffeine is in. Like, I love coffee. I love soda. Energy drinks are good to me. All that stuff. Back in the day, I would have chose that over water any day. And so, but it's funny now, I have no desire to drink the caffeine. I still want to drink the drinks. I would love a coffee. I would love a Coke and popcorn and movie. But for me, the migraines right now, I'm sure I'll end up slipping back into it as time has a way of changing your memory and things like that of how bad it actually was. But those types of things keep me from indulging in those at all, or at an extreme amount, if that makes sense. So people I have talked to have mentioned alcohol, tobacco, caffeine being triggers. So that might be one of the very first things you want to try. Like I said, I'm going to start with the hardest one for people. The next one is hydration. For me, if I'm dehydrated, I will get a migraine. I have to stay hydrated throughout the day. And I'm not just talking about, this goes back to the first one. It doesn't go back to just drinking any liquids. You drink something that's insanely sugary and it's going to pull water resources out of your body. So you want to drink something that's full of water, healthy for you. So you're wanting to drink something that is full of water and not contaminated with tons of other things that are going to pull these water resources away from your body. So if you have to drink something with flavor, look for something with natural flavored flavors in it. No, I'm not talking about like Diet Coke. I'm talking about like LaCroix, sparkling water, things that are flavored, things that aren't going to be pulling away from good resources. And water obviously is the best. So I think the latest thing that I've heard is drink half your body weight in ounces. So if you weigh 200 pounds, you should be drinking 100 ounces a day. 150 pounds, you should be drinking 75 ounces a day. So that sounds like a lot of water, and it is. It's way more than you would think, because your body's constantly using the water in your body. Whether you're eating, it's using water for digestion. If you're exercising, it's using it for fuel and for chemical reactions to provide energy to your muscles. So you're constantly losing water all day. So we constantly need to be replenishing it. An easy way to do that, what I used to do is I used to just have like a 32 ounce hydro flask, and I would just know I got to drink 2 to 3 of these a day. And so that's staying hydrated is probably one of the best defenses against a migraine. And even then they'll still come, but it's a great first line of defense to stay hydrated. And it's one of the first things I do when I start feeling a migraine on, I start chugging water. It's like my go-to first thing that I do. The next thing is to eat consistently. There was a time, I'm not this way anymore, but there was a time if I missed a meal, I would get a migraine. And I wasn't consciously thinking like, oh no, I haven't eaten, I'm going to get a migraine. You might think that that's like stress induced, but no, there was times I would just be working and I was too busy and I wouldn't eat lunch. And then by 4:00, sure enough, a migraine is setting in, and there's kind of no stopping it at that point. Even if I ate, it was still there. So eating consistently, we'll get into what you eat and eating healthy and all that stuff, but eating consistently, making sure you're eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner. A lot of people, it's much easier for me now to do like intermittent fasting where I miss breakfast and I start eating at lunch. I seem to be able to handle that better now, but in the past I couldn't. If I missed a meal, I was going to get a migraine. So hydration, eating consistently. This is a really random one, but cutting out fragrances. I realized literally probably a year and a half ago, after experiencing migraines for 8 years at that point, that there were certain colognes that I was wearing that would give me a migraine. And I discovered it because I woke up, I had worn cologne that day, or like, I don't know, we'd done something at night and I had sprayed cologne on, and I fell asleep in bed wearing that same shirt that I was wearing all day. Woke up in the middle of the night with a really bad migraine. And sometimes when I get migraines, I kind of get like flushing and I feel hot. So I like took my shirt off. I was laying there. And this is very rare. If I wake up in the middle of the night with a migraine, it's pretty rare that I just wake up in the morning and it's magically gone. But I woke up and it was totally gone. And I was like, whoa, that's nice. And then same thing the next day. I had wearing the same cologne, woke up in the middle of the night, had a migraine, did the same thing, took my shirt off, and woke up with no migraine. So it was like it took 2 nights in a row where I was like, wait a second. And then the next night, I think I was wearing the cologne during the day, and I either just went to bed without that shirt on, or I changed shirts, or maybe I showered or something before bed. I don't know, but whatever it was, I woke up, didn't wake up in the middle of the night with a migraine, didn't have one in the morning, and I pegged it on that cologne. So I went probably 2 years, well, not 2 years because it wasn't that long ago, but I probably went the next year without wearing any cologne at all. And I noticed a huge difference that I was getting less migraines because of that certain fragrance. And I remember my mom always, because my mom has had migraines for a long time too, and she would always ask me, well, is it like a fragrance? Do you feel sensitive to smells and things? And I never thought I was one of those people. I was like, no, I don't notice any correlation to what smells I'm around and things like that. And then I pegged it on cologne. So something to look at. If a fragrance or something, or a strong smell that you're around continuously, if that is inducing migraines. So something definitely important. The next one is sleep. Sleep is so important. I am kind of one of those people like that. I'm anxious enough. I rarely take naps during the day. I will be so tired, and my wife will be like, just go take a nap. And I'll be like feeling like I'm falling asleep on the couch. And then I will lay in bed, and immediately my brain just wakes up of all these thoughts and things I got to do. And I've never been good at being able to nap during the day. So for me, which I'm not great at, is making sure I'm getting a solid 8 hours of sleep. For a lot of people that have migraines, naps are like, those are just go-tos. You got to take a nap. You got to get into a dark room, especially if your eyes are sensitive to light. And so making sure you're getting enough sleep, and on top of that, being able to try, if you're a type of person that can take a nap, taking advantage of that when you can. All right, so this next one is consistent exercise. Not many things help preventing migraines for me than consistent exercise, and whatever that may be. But for me, I did learn something, that when I exercise, I got to make sure I'm hydrating before, during, and after, or else the exercise will give me a migraine. I know it's ridiculous, but I remember I'm going to try and exercise more for migraines, and I remember getting migraines. I remember thinking I'm going to exercise more consistently to prevent my migraines. And when I started exercising, I was doing heavy cardio, and I was getting migraines almost every time after I was exercising. So that goes back to hydration. So I've noticed a huge difference if I eat and hydrate before I work out, staying hydrated during and after. Very rarely get migraines due to exercise. But I look at it this way, and this isn't medical at all. This isn't science. This is just me thinking about my own body and my own experience over the past 10 years with migraines. I feel like my body operates more optimal the more loose and fluid my body feels, if that makes sense. So I notice it just as a whole, joints, my back, my neck, my migraines, things seem to be much more fluid and have way more mobility. And because of that, I have less migraines. And so exercise, I'm going to talk about stretching, all these things that just keep my body kind of loosey-goosey, feeling good, seem to prevent migraines greatly in me. And so exercise comes along with that a lot, whether it's cardio, lifting weights, yoga. Yoga is fantastic for things like migraines because you're elongating, stretching out these muscles. You're, again, not science, but from what I've read, maybe science, you're stretching and you're opening up things where more fluid, more nutrients, more things are able to access it. You're getting more bioavailability to your cells by keeping this fluid motion of exercise and yoga and stretching. So I notice when I'm on top of those things like migraines and overall pain in my body seem to lessen. And I think it's something to do with inflammation and just blood flow and all of that good stuff. So consistent exercise. I know I'm not naming easy ones to stay on top of: cutting out alcohol, tobacco, caffeine, exercising consistently. But they all play a part, at least in me with migraines and so many people I've talked to. It is this full body approach to preventing migraines. The next one is eating healthy. The biggest things I've been told, and I'm going to say this, so take this with a grain of salt, because I've been told this so many times that I should try 90 days, no gluten, no sugar, no dairy, those 3 things specifically, and processed foods. And that sounds like everything, which it pretty much is, but that's where you get the birth of things like Whole30 diets and things like that are just a 30-day kind of cleansing your system of these processed foods, sugars, dairy, gluten, things that you might not be able to process. Now mine is, I know that's kind of just a buzzword, like gluten-free, dairy-free. I've personally done blood panels and work. I've done it with medical doctors. I've done it with naturopathic doctors. And the thing that has come back to me, no doctor has told me this on my own. It's when I've asked for those key markers. And I did this with a naturopath, and she said, you do have allergic, they said you do have allergic markers to dairy and gluten sensitivities. Now, I don't know enough about that to know how credible that is or how much, but gluten intolerance is definitely a thing in my family. Like everyone in my family who has removed it from their diet has seen great increases in healthy markers, whether it's migraines, anxiety, depression, bloating, any different thing in your body that reacts to gluten and dairy. And that's one thing that I've been so bad at trying, because everything I eat has gluten and it has dairy and it has sugar in it. And so that is something I'm trying in 2021, is doing a solid 30 days. I'd like to do 90 days, but at least 30 days where I'm off of those things and use it as kind of a measurement if those things are affecting migraines, because everybody's body's different. And the things I have read, because gluten-free is such a buzzword, like I said, but a lot of things I have read is why people are having so much problem with gluten, particularly in the United States, is the way it's processed and how different it is from different areas. Because I have someone very close to me that doesn't eat gluten. They have extreme reactions to it, but they've traveled to places like Italy and eaten pasta there, and they're completely fine. They even have a restaurant by them that imports all of their pasta from Italy, and they can eat that. And so call that a placebo effect, call it whatever you will, but that's what they experience. And so it might not be that you can't tolerate gluten. It's just the type of gluten that you're experiencing. So whatever, that's something you can try that is very hard because it's in most of our foods here in the United States. But gluten, dairy, sugar, and processed foods are, I've been told that by multiple people in the professional industry, whether it's naturopathic. I talked to what are they called? Enterologist, nutritionist, and those are the number one things they seem to say to get off of if you're experiencing these, whether it's GI issues or central nervous issues, migraines, all that stuff. And the thing that obviously goes along with that is inflammatory foods, which kind of are involved in all that processed foods. Those aren't things that your body naturally processes well. You know, we didn't really evolve to eat those foods very well because they're kind of man-made, they're processed, they're changed, and your body sometimes doesn't know what to do with that. And so eating healthy is kind of an obvious thing when it comes to mental health and migraines, and it's one of the hardest things to do because everywhere we go, I'm trying to do this now, that whole 30 thing with no gluten. I immediately went to had a smoothie for breakfast and then went to a restaurant and was just kind of staring at the menu. Everything's a sandwich or wrapped in a tortilla, and I just said, do you have any gluten-free options? I'm like that guy right now. And she just basically you can take anything and turn it into a bowl or a salad. So that's what I ended up doing. But so it's not easy. It's almost everywhere we go, it's something that has to be a mental thing. So that's what makes it so tough to give it a good, solid try. But that's what I'm going to try. I'll let you know how it goes. The next one is magnesium. Magnesium was the very first supplement that people told me to get on if you have migraines. You can be deficient in it, but migraines, there is correlated evidence and research that shows magnesium can prevent migraines. And so I take a magnesium supplement. I try to take it every single day. The next thing is magnesium soaks, which I learned about a year ago. People have liquid magnesium. I used to just soak my feet in it for 45 minutes while I worked, or magnesium salt baths, magnesium liquid baths. They're finding a correlation to how much magnesium can help, not just with migraines, but with inflammation and just overall body pain. So that's something I started, and I do that more now for prevention, which I should do, but because liquid magnesium, the one I get at least, is really expensive. So I use it now more for when I get a migraine, I'll use it in a bath or something like that. Where are we at? The next one I kind of already talked about with Epsom salt baths. Those are magnesium salts. That's one of my favorite things to do when I get a migraine. We'll get the kids to bed, or I'll do it early in the morning. Just fill up a hot tub, put some Epsom salt in it, and I'll just freaking soak and let my muscles just loosen up and feel better. And if it doesn't take my migraine away, it really, really helps though in lowering the pain of it. This next part can seem a little hokey. It's more the natural medical side of things. And if you're not in any of this stuff, you can just fast forward later to the end. I'll start talking about medication and things like that. But these, I want to give as much information as I can of things I've tried, things I've studied, and things I've heard other people try that have helped them. Everything I've listed on here, if it hasn't helped me, I've talked to somebody that it's really, really helped. And so this next one it's just essential oils. So peppermint is something I really do swear by. If you have sore muscles or you have issues, a lot of CBD oil can have peppermint in it, and it gives kind of that cooling feeling. That helps me so much with migraines. And a lot of times it doesn't, it almost just perceives that the pain is less. and I know it's not something that's hurting my body. So I'll put some peppermint on, I'll rub it all the way down my neck, onto my traps. I'll put it on my temples, my forehead. A lot of times I'll just put it under my nose so I can smell it. So when I do those Epsom salt baths, a lot of times I'll couple that with peppermint and put it on places on my head that are hurting and my neck to try and loosen up my neck. And so no matter how you feel about essential oils, peppermint is really awesome when it comes to migraines. And again, I'm not saying it's going to take your migraine away. There's literally times though that I've taken peppermint and it's greatly reduced my migraine. A lot of times it hasn't done anything other than just feel good on my neck and head. And going along with that is kind of like an ice pack. That's another thing. Ice pack or heating pad, that helps a lot of people, but that's the category that I put peppermint in. I'm not trying to take away my migraine with it. The feeling you get that it feels a lot better than dealing with your migraine with nothing. So peppermint oil, I'm really into that. Sauna, that's not a super hokey thing. That's the next one, is a sauna. This is another thing that I've come into, just knowing that sauna, the research shows that sauna, once a week and even 3 times a week greatly is from what I've read, is supposed to greatly reduce inflammation in your body. And so I notice how much better my body as a whole feels when I consistently do sauna. The gym I go to has a sauna, and there's weeks where I've done it 3 and 4 times, and I feel great after it when it comes to my overall body feeling and migraines and things like that. I love going. There's times I've got a migraine and I've just gone to the gym to sit in the sauna. I've literally just done that, to sit in the sauna. Exercise is a hard one when you do have a migraine because you feel so miserable. The last one I had really, really bad. I remember waking up at like 5 a.m. and it was cold outside, but I just had such a bad migraine. I just chugged a bunch of water and I just went for a run, and that can be really miserable. But I kind of was like at the end of my rope. I'd done everything and I woke up with another one and it kind of just wasn't going away. So I just went for a run, and when I came back, I was surprised how much better it did feel. But it's so hard to get out and do that type of exercise when you're not feeling well. But there are sometimes I'll just force myself to go to the gym. I'll just do the elliptical, something that's not super hard on my body, and then I'll go sit in the sauna. And oftentimes it does at least lower the intensity of it. Okay, so I wanted to put this part in here because I forgot it yesterday. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm in a different outfit, and I got to editing and realized I left this out. And it's one of the biggest parts. I got to stretching, and deep breathing was a part I was going to put on this yesterday, and I did it in a very superficial way and realized I left this out, and it's huge. And I purchased this program years ago about migraine therapy, and I wanted to include it in the description. So if you go in the YouTube description or Apple Podcasts, wherever you are, if you look at the description, there will be a link that you can download this. And it's pretty lengthy, but he swears by it. If you follow it, it's these stretching and breathing techniques that can greatly reduce your migraines. And I know when I have done it, it has helped me a lot. But there's so much good information in this that can just help you understand what's going on with a migraine and give you some tips on how you can do it. But he has this full program that if you follow it, he swears by it, that it helps people with their migraines. So a lot of the studies that he did, he realized that these people experiencing migraines were receiving a lot of relief with oxygen therapy. And so he could have just stopped there and been like, hey, just everybody who has migraines, go get oxygen therapy. But he tried to get to the root of the problem, and he looked into posture, breathing, stretching, the tightness of our muscles, and how it creates this inefficiency with blood supply to our brain, and therefore healthy oxygen getting to through our neck muscles up into our brain. So I'm just going to read a part of this, and go to the description and you can download this for free. I'll make it available to you guys because it's so helpful. But he talks about this. I want to read a few parts in this to kind of drive home why he developed this whole program. So he says, for your brain to receive enough oxygen, 4 things must happen. You must breathe deeply to inhale enough oxygen to use. The oxygen must move from the lungs to the blood cells. The blood must be delivered through the neck up to the brain. Finally, the blood must flow throughout the whole brain. And then he says, doesn't sound like too hard of a job, right? But there's a ton of obstacles, or 4 main obstacles that prevent this from happening. And he says that of all the oxygen that our body takes in, 40% of that is used by the brain. So we want everything to be flowing well to be providing good oxygen to our brain. So he says, here's 4 obstacles that happen that stop this process from happening, or at least weaken this process. He says, first of all, most of us have muscles around the breathing passages that are simply too weak or tense, or used to make up for other muscles that are too weak or tense. That's the reason why over 70% of Westerners experience back pains in some time of their life. Blame it on the chair we sit on bad working positions, but the fact remains that almost 10 times more Westerners have back pain than people living in Asia. So instead of taking a few deep breaths into the lower part of our lung, using our diaphragm fully, we take many shallow breaths. And you notice that if you really pay attention to your breathing, I do that a lot. A lot of my breaths are more rapid, shallow breaths, which is a very inefficient way of doing it. And if you listen to a Rogan podcast, he had a guy on who wrote a book called Breathe, and it's all about nasal breathing and how much more efficient that is versus mouth breathing. And that all goes in line with this. I'm like conscious of that every day about nasal breathing and how much more efficient it is and how many problems and chronic pain and all these things that can happen in our body just by breathing inefficiently. So that first problem is these weak muscles, and it causes us to breathe inefficiently. He says the second problem is that when we take shallow, quick, small breaths, the bigger part of the air left in the lungs becomes carbon dioxide instead of oxygen filled. The third problem, probably the biggest one, you never want to get caught in a bottleneck traffic jam. Well, your blood cells have the same problem when they go through the neck, especially if your neck has some tension in it or if your head is not positioned right on. This is huge, especially I think in modern day culture. You just think of your body position. Naturally, we're looking at our phones or a computer screen, our head is pitched forward, and he gives the analogy of holding a bowling ball right above your head is much easier than holding it out here kind of pitched in front of you a lot more. It requires much more muscle, integration of muscles and strength and all of that, and you would become much weaker holding it out in front of you versus straight up where your head is supposed to be. So he gives that same analogy of us pitching our head forward, it just not being good on our neck, on our spine, and it creates this whole host of problems. And so body position is huge. Finally, the fourth problem your system runs into while delivering blood into your brain is that the muscles around the brain are stiff and weak and don't move enough naturally to support the delivery of blood all around the head. Okay, so taking those 4 problems, he's developed this program that integrates stretching, deep breathing, these balancing techniques that is pretty lengthy, but is supposed to loosen everything up, help with your posture, help with your breathing, that's supposed to deliver this healthy oxygen to your brain and get you the blood supply and the oxygen that your body requires. So when we're not getting that, it results in this inefficient blood flow, inefficient oxygen delivery to our brain, leading to tension headaches, migraines. So his 3 things that he's developed in this program is body balancing exercises, breathing exercises. And he talks about the third part of this program includes exercises that relax and strengthen the muscles around the brain. These exercises are very effective for typical tension headaches especially. They not only loosen up pressure in the head, but by training these muscles, you'll strengthen the blood vessels that will deliver oxygen to the brain. And in and out, you want blood flowing out as well efficiently to remove things and create this cycle, right? Your oxygen gets used up, becomes carbon dioxide. You want a good delivery system out as well. So I'm going to make this available to you. Again, it's by Christian Goodman. You can look it up, but I purchased this years ago. And the times I've done it, some of them seem kind of silly, the stretches and the balancing techniques, but it's all meant to kind of loosen everything up leading up to the head and getting them strengthened. There's even eye muscle techniques where you're looking left and right, you know, using muscles to kind of loosen everything up and strengthen the muscles to support this delivery system. So I wanted to make sure I made that available to you. Going along with stretching and breathing techniques, that's where mindfulness and meditation come in as well. That also help greatly with migraines and keeps you focused on deep breathing. I notice when I do podcasts, I don't breathe normally unless I'm talking to another person. I do a huge inhale, I start talking, and because I don't want a lot of pauses in the podcast, I'll say as much as I can. And there's sometimes I even take breaks and I blow it all out, take a second, take a deep breath, and I talk. And I do that kind of subconsciously because I'm not talking to another person. I'm kind of just ranting. And so a lot of that oxygen, I can feel it deep in my chest, and I'm not really engaging my abdomen to do these things. A very inefficient way. And so there has been sometimes I've done podcasts and I get to the end and I have a migraine because I'm not breathing very efficiently. And I mean, I take that to be the cause of the migraine because I'm not getting a lot of oxygen-rich blood up into my brain. And so I'm a believer of this. I'm a believer of integrating anything that can loosen up your body. I said this a couple times in the podcast, getting it loosey-goosey, just so things function properly. It's all about this whole body approach, not just taking medication to make it go away, even though that helps. Like we said, it's not a long-term solution. And that's what I'm looking for when it comes to mental health, physical health, is long-term solutions, getting at the root of the problem. And so, again, just go to the description. You can download this for free. Check it out. Let me know if it helps you, if you try it out. This next one, a lot of people probably haven't heard about this. They've heard about foam rollers, but a fascinator is different from a foam roller, that it's a lot harder. It doesn't squish, it doesn't bend, and it's meant to really massage deep on your fascia tissue. So they used to say the skin is the biggest organ in the body. Now they're saying it's fascia, because fascia lines every single thing in your body. It's underneath all your skin. It surrounds every organ. It helps to separate compartments in your body. Like, it's everywhere. It looks like a web of tissue that's just going throughout your entire body, surrounding everything. And so they're finding so much injury and inflammation and pain that people are experiencing from this fascia being tight, and it's crackly and it's inflamed. I know this personally because I started going to these fascia classes, and the only reason I haven't been going to them lately is because they're at 6 a.m. and I've been going to bed so late. But I would go to these fascinator classes. This hard roller, you can buy them. I think it's just fascinator.com. And you got to spell it right, because if you don't, it'll take you to those fascia headband things. So I couldn't find it for a long time, but fascinator.com sells them. I think they're like $60. Some gyms sell them too. But I would go to these classes and I can literally you can hear the fascia crackling underneath, especially when I would do it on the bottoms of my feet. You can hear it crackling. And I remember thinking, like, this is so hokey. Like, this is what is happening. Like, they're acting like fascia rolling is like curing cancer or something like that. But I remember going consistently and getting to a point where when I rolled my feet, it wasn't crackling and it didn't hurt anymore. I could roll out muscles and it didn't hurt. The one that hurt the worst for me were quads, because if you sit a lot like I do, you're at your hips, your legs are kind of in flexion, and they get they get shortened, so they get tight when you're stretching them. That's why you feel that stretching. But when you roll them with a fascinator, if you've never done that before, I was like trying not to grunt in my class. I was just like, because you're literally just rubbing out the fascia so deep that it's loosening it up. And what they believe is that it loosens it up and it brings fluid in, it hydrates it, it lowers the inflammation, the tightness, and all of that. So I noticed a big difference when I was going to that consistently, because you roll out literally from toe to head, you roll out your entire body, and it usually ends with us at the neck. You roll out your sternocleidomastoid, you roll out just below your occipital bone, those muscles where it attaches to your skull. It loosens up all of that, and it feels so good. You even have these, you roll like your forehead, your temples, your TMJ. So I noticed when I was going to those classes consistently, I was feeling a lot better, because my whole body just felt looser, which for me led to decrease in migraines. So the fascinator, check it out. This next one, TMJ problems, that's a big one. I've had TMJ problems since I was like 18. I think I got my wisdom teeth out, and I don't know, they put me out for it, and I don't know what happened because I was asleep. But I remember waking up, and about a month after, I was just talking to my dad. We were on the ski lift. I remember we were talking, I was chewing some gum, and all of a sudden my jaw locked up, and I was just like, ugh. And I had to like grind it closed, and I heard it just, and so I don't know what happened, if tissue like slid between the joint or what, but I remember having to grind it closed. And ever since then, if I open my mouth even too far, it unlocks and it kind of has to lock back in to close. If I move my jaw around, I can hear a grinding. So TMJ is a big one for me, where I'll get really a lot of tightness here, and the better I can loosen that up and keep it loose, the better it is for me, because I've literally felt it kind of in my neck, then in my jaw, and moving up into my head. So TMJ is a big problem for a lot of people. Some people have even gotten mouth guards. I never did this because the only ones I found were so expensive. But these mouth guards that you can sleep in at night, that kind of trains your jaw to be in a healthy place. And a buddy of mine said he used to got migraines all the time. And once he wore that consistently, he noticed over a while that he no longer gets them, and he no longer has the pain in his jaw. So that might be something for the future. But the ones I looked at were way more than I was wanting to spend. And so TMJ issues is a big one. All right, this next one is by far going to sound the most hokey if you're not into things that are holistic. And it's EFT tapping, which stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. And that name alone is probably going to trigger you to not even want to look into it. But I'm into putting everything on this list that I've talked to people that say that it helps. And I have talked to people that say EFT tapping helped. I can't say for me it's helped a lot. But months ago, I literally found myself doing it because I just want to try everything. I'll have a whole arsenal of tools, and I want to use everything that's in the toolkit if nothing else is working. And for me, that's EFT tapping. So the point behind it is kind of focusing on these meridian points, or energy hotspots as they call them. And you're basically tapping on them and doing positive affirmations that is putting you in a mental state of overcoming whatever pain or trauma, or people use it for everything, not just migraines, but they'll use it for anxiety. They'll use it for anxiety and panic attacks. They'll use it for past trauma. It's a way of kind of doing positive affirmations and overcoming this obstacle that's in front of you. So the meridian hotspots, like I'm sure they're all over your body, but the ones I always learned was like right on top of your head, you're tapping there, you're tapping right here, on your temples, under your eye, right below your nose, right below your lip. I think there's 2 here. And then underneath, like you look like a monkey when you're tapping those, right? Kind of by your armpit. And so this is all an alternate treatment for pain, emotional distress, and all those things. And it might be 100% placebo for people, but people swear by them, and so I don't really care if it's a placebo for somebody or if it's legit science. If it's working for someone, I say do it. So that's where EFT tapping comes. I would recommend, instead of me explaining more about that, is just YouTube EFT tapping for migraines, and you'll find so many videos of people taking you through even 5-minute practices that you can do up to, however long people do it. I don't know what the longest people do it, but a lot of people start out. The thing I liked about it is the positive affirmations, that it kind of centers you. It's a type of mindfulness meditation where a lot of the time it starts out, you're tapping these hot spots and you're saying things like, even though I have this migraine, I still love and accept myself, and you're doing these, which again, if you're not into this at all, it's going to sound really funny, but, I'm into those positive affirmations. I'm into those things that as a person, because you can be stuck with a migraine, you can be stuck with anxiety, depression, and you bring it to yourself and you have negative implications about yourself because of these things. Like, gosh, why do I have a migraine? Like, what does that say about me? Like, I suck. I should be stronger. All these dumb things that you shouldn't be saying to yourself. That's what I liked about EFT. If it's nothing else, it's a positive affirmation for yourself to get your mind back on the right track. All right, so now we're slipping into more medication type stuff. And I'm going to start with the natural one first, and that's medical cannabis. And so I've done a couple episodes on medical cannabis. There's no secret here that I'm a big fan of it, for people having it as a resource, having it as a possible medication for themselves, as something natural to do before they want to try medication. Again, I'm not your cannabis doctor. I'm not your medical doctor. So don't say, oh, Kavin said medical cannabis works great for migraines, I'm going to go do whatever and go crazy with it. I'm about providing information for people, and then you see how it applies to you and really look into it. If this is a moral issue for you with medical cannabis, I would strongly recommend learning the research and the history behind medical cannabis, because there has been great strides in how it's helped people mentally, physically, especially for chronic pain. People with migraines experience a lot of benefit from medical cannabis because they're they're not having the negative physical implications that they're having with other medications. There's a lot of migraine medications that increases blood pressure that, I'll get into this afterwards, but has other rebound effects due to migraines. And a lot of people don't experience that with medical cannabis. I'm not saying it's for everybody and every single person should get on it and try it, but I have experienced that. If nothing else, it helps a lot of people get to sleep. A lot of people can't even sleep because their migraine is so bad they feel nauseous or nauseated. So they can use medical cannabis in a way that they can fall asleep. They can get some relief for their pain so they can have a good night's sleep. A lot of people with migraines too are waking up multiple times in the night, which isn't helpful for your sleep, and it's definitely not doing any good for your migraine. So what it's helped me with is have a good night's sleep. What it's helped me with is to reduce chronic pain. It's greatly helped me with my own mental health and processing information and working through trauma, feeling detached from those thoughts and negative feelings about myself. So it's helped me a ton. So I'm a big advocate for it. But I think everybody needs to do their research on it and see if it's a good thing for them. But medical cannabis, I'm like, for me personally, that is my go-to when I'm looking into the category of medication. I'm going to start there, and if it doesn't help, then I can try something else. I'm not saying I do that every single time, but I love knowing that that's there as an option if other things aren't working. And for some people, it's their first thing they go to because it helps them so much. I know someone personally, I'm not trying to give out any names or anything here, but someone close to me used to have to take medicine, used to have to take all these things. They would sometimes have to sleep for the entire day, who supplement now with medical cannabis, and they're not an issue. They're like, I can't remember the last time I had a migraine. It's been a year or two, and that's the dream. Not even remembering when you had your last migraine. That's the dream, because usually they happen enough. You can be like, yeah, I had one the other day. I had one last week, So medical cannabis is that natural option that people can try, that it really helps a lot of people. And if you are struggling with, and maybe it's not legal in your area, so that's something to take into consideration as well. But learning why we feel the way we feel about medical cannabis, I won't go into that again in this episode. So I've already done an episode about kind of the history of medical cannabis and how it's been demonized, and that still floods in today, and a lot of people still have that moral conundrum about it. But I'll say this for fear of repeating myself that I said in the other episode, we have to take a look at why we're okay with certain medications and not okay with other medications. There is a reason for that. There's some that are more dangerous than others. But when we're talking about medical cannabis, when you weigh the risk factors and the things that the long-term effects, we should understand that there is a problem when we're not okay with that, but we're okay with somebody taking opioids or other migraine medications that do have a long list of potential risks and negative effects to your body. So I've heard people that are completely okay getting a prescription for opioids from their doctor for their back pain, but then they have an issue with medical cannabis. So that for me has helped me a lot to learn why, if I felt that way in the past, which I don't think I ever did, but if other things in my life where I felt a certain way, learning about the history of them and why they are the way they are, and really reading the literature behind people that are using them has helped me a lot to change a lot of my own perspectives. And medication is a big one for that. Again, I'm going to show you right now, I'm not against medication. I'm just all for doing the healthiest options possible for a person, and then always knowing that these things are here as resources as you need them. So the next one is just the obvious go-to. If you get a migraine and you can take something like Tylenol, ibuprofen, Excedrin, and it takes away, good for you, because that is not the case in my experience with most people. Most people will take ibuprofen. They say it might reduce it a little bit, but it's more just a little Band-Aid that they do, and then they kind of go to sleep. But most people I've talked to, those things don't even touch their migraines, and I don't even try taking those anymore, because I know that they're not going to reduce my migraine and definitely not going to take it away. And so there are a lot of migraine medications out there. And this is where it's tricky, because as I'm not a doctor, I'm not going to tell you what's better, what's not. I'm just going to say there's a lot available. So if you're trying things and they're not working, know that there are specific migraine medications that could help you. Again, the one that I take is Imitrex, and Imitrex is specifically for migraines. So if you have a headache and you took an Imitrex, it would not take it away. That's how specific it is to migraines. And it works because they, like I talked about in the beginning, they believe a lot of migraines is this dilation of the blood vessels in your brain. And so Imitrex is doing the opposite of that. It's using constriction to your blood vessels to relieve that pressure. The problem with these types of migraine medications, and I'm saying this as someone who uses Imitrex and fully aware of this, is a common side effect to these are rebound migraines. So it might take your migraine away for that day or for those 12 hours, but often that migraine comes back. Sometimes it comes back with a vengeance, and I've experienced that where I've taken Imitrex, I'm like, oh good, it's gone. I feel good. I go about my day, and then the next day I have one. Sometimes I've had one that's a lot worse. And so they do have that effect of rebound migraines where you feel like you have to take it more. Imitrex has a lot of other side effects. You can have tightness in the chest. And this is what's hard is I will research medications on my own and then talk to a doctor about it. And there's been doctors I've talked to where I've talked about the side effects and they're like, no, I don't think that's one. And they'll look it up and it is one. So the scary one for me about Imitrex is that it does have heart implications. I have really bad genetics when it comes to heart health. And so that's one that's always at the forefront of my mind. And so I'm always weighing out those options of this pain of a migraine and taking Imitrex and trying my hardest not to think when I'm taking it that it's doing bad for my body. I'm trying at the time to do something good for my body, but medications are definitely things we got to be aware of. And I'm so grateful that they're here as options for pain relief and for things like that. But if I'm fully honest with you, once I started taking Imitrex, there was a time where I was experiencing more migraines, and I was taking that more, which was taking the migraine away, but I was still getting them the next day and the next day. And so that's a very real truth, and it's something you got to weigh out. And I'm just trying to be fully honest about my experience with it. That being said, I still have a prescription of it. I still use it when I need it, but it's something I actively am trying to do all these other things that I'm talking about to prevent migraines so I don't have to resort to that. But that's just one, and there's lots of other migraine medications. There's Aimovig, I think you call it, which is like a monthly injection. There's preventative migraine medications that you take monthly or weekly that are working more on prevention, where Imitrex is, which I say Imitrex, which you probably know it by sumatriptan, but that is more in the moment. You experience a migraine or you feel it coming on and you take that to reduce it. So there you have it. There's a huge list of things you can do to prevent migraines, or even when you have a migraine, doing these things to greatly reduce the intensity of it. If you are someone who experiences migraines, I'm so sorry. I feel so bad for you. I'm there with you. I experience them. I have noticed when I am striving for positive mental health and healthy living, my migraines are greatly reduced. And when I slip back into unhealthy lifestyles and things like that, they do tend to get more intense. And even when I'm not doing those things like healthy exercise, eating well, good sleep, I notice I don't process information as well either. So I'll have stressful things in my life that normally wouldn't affect a lot of people, and I notice that I don't process them as well, which leads to migraines. And my wife has been the best at pinpointing that for me, because I never really correlated the two, but we would have certain life events and I would start getting migraines a couple days before. And she would always pinpoint that, like, oh, it's because we're going here or because we're doing this. And I never thought that it was that big of a deal, but my brain is processing those things with anxiety way far down the road, and you're already thinking about them before they're even here. So the way you process stress, anxiety, depression, emotional distress, trauma, all those things do play in to migraines. And a lot of people are finding really benefit in working through those things and trying to be as mentally healthy as they can, because it all bleeds into those physical symptoms that someone experiences. So I know that's easier said than done, but when it comes to mental health especially, and I can couple migraines with that, I'm all about prevention over waiting for the problem to hit. So when you're doing these steps and something you're daily doing, you're cutting out things that you know trigger migraines, you're staying hydrated, you're eating healthy, you're exercising, you're striving to sleep well. You have all these other tools of magnesium and supplements and just healthy living as a whole and thinking positively about yourself and the world around you, there is no doubt that there's a correlation between all of that good, healthy lifestyle and the physical symptoms that you feel afterwards. I'm not saying that if you're doing all those things, you're going to avoid every trauma and every sickness and every chronic disease and all those things. But there's no doubt when it comes to mental health and migraines specifically, that striving to do all those things greatly reduces that in some way. So I definitely have more things I could say about migraines and things that do help for it, but I feel like this is the list I've created that have helped me a lot and helped people I know. And so I wanted to put these as the big ones for me. If you have others, give me a shout out, DM me on Instagram or something and tell me, because I would love to share it with more people. The more information and more resources, the better, which is great in this day and age with the internet, because we have lots of information and things. It's just the hardest part for me and probably for you is doing the work to make it so we have the results we're looking for. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. I really appreciate you listening to this episode. This is an important topic for me because I know a lot of people suffer with this, as I do, and I just want to provide resources for people. If you want to support our podcast, go to our YouTube channel, like and subscribe, go to our Facebook page, our Instagram page. You can join our private group if you want to be part of a community that has these discussions free of judgment, and we can just learn from each other. The next, you can go make a donation at patreon.com/inmyhead podcast. 100% of your donation goes to the supporting this podcast and making it happen. We greatly appreciate those patrons we already have. The next is, if you like CBD products, go to this link. If you purchase CBD products through this link, a portion of the sales will go to supporting the podcast. The last one is betterhelp.com/inmyhead. I'll say it again and again. I don't get paid by these guys. It's just something I'm very grateful that is there as a resource for people. If you go to betterhelp.com/inmyhead, you can get a free week of online therapy. You can cancel at any time. You can even just use your free week and cancel and never have to make a single payment. But it's a great resource for people, and a lot of people are finding great benefit in therapy as a whole and this online therapy right in the comfort of your own home. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast, and I'll see you next time. You're listening to the In My Head podcast, a place for open discussions about mental and physical health. This is not meant to be a diagnosis or a treatment plan, but a safe place to share ideas, hear personal stories, and learn from trained professionals. Our number one goal is to remove the stigma surrounding mental health and provide resources for those struggling, as well as education for those who want to help their loved ones. Difficult subjects of mental illness, suicide, addiction, and abuse are discussed on this podcast. Viewer discretion is advised. Thanks for listening, and welcome to the In My Head podcast.